As you know, the Trump administration significantly cut the staff at CP3, which you worked with, which led to your resignation. Is that true?
Senator, there is no more office at all. The entire thing was dismantled on the final two people left on September 11th and 12th.
So the prevention effort you're describing to us is now no longer funded?
That is correct.
Are you concerned about the potential rise in attacks that we may see without similar level of inquiries taking place under this administration?
Senator, I've given my life to protecting the American people. I'm incredibly worried about the rise of targeted violence and terrorism across the ideological spectrum at the same time that we've dismantled the very apparatus that can prevent it.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in the East. That man is William Braniff. He is a counterterrorism scholar who he was the director of the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, or CP3. It was a division of DHS established by the Biden administration and then gutted by Donald Trump soon after he became president for a second term, leading to Braniff's resignation and protest. The cutting of CP3 is among the many actions this administration has taken that are the focus of a new report by Democrats on the Senate Homeland Security Committee, which calls out the undoing of critical counterterrorism infrastructure, leaving this country more vulnerable to threats. From that report released by Michigan Senator Gary Peters, quote, "Since the first day of his second term, President Trump and his administration have dismantled critical national security agencies and programs and diverted significant resources and attention away from the fight against terrorism. These actions are the result of a combination of ideologically motivated firings and realignment of personnel and the wielding of government resources from grants to counterterrorism authorities as a weapon against political opponents. The administration's actions have left Americans far more vulnerable to a potential terrorist attack and left law enforcement officers and agents without the tools to protect our nation." MS Now's reporting of the senator's examination makes note of this, quote, "The report says the Justice Department and the FBI have lost more than 15,000 employees, including many experienced national security professionals. Others have been reassigned, including the entire staff of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section, which provided operational support to all 55 FBI field offices in investigating domestic terrorism threats." MS Now has reached out to the White House, the Justice Department, the FBI, and DHS for comment. Meanwhile, this week saw the confirmation of Jay Clayton as the Director of National Intelligence, a man we already know from his congressional testimony will go to great lengths to tell Donald Trump what he wants to hear. And the current DHS Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, has a history of comments encouraging violence. During his confirmation hearing in March, he said dueling was still allowed in the Senate, to which Senator Rand Paul quickly corrected, saying it has been illegal for 170 years, all fitting into a portrait of an administration that does not prioritize safety or Americans' security much at all. As the report summarizes, quote, "Almost 25 years after the attacks of September 11th, 2001, the Trump administration's misalignment of resources and ideologically driven decision-making on what counts as terrorism has created vulnerabilities in America's national security preparedness, and in this moment of great threat, ultimately jeopardizes the safety of the American people." That is where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. MS Now Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Dilanian is with us. Also joining us, senior political analyst, host of the Runaway Country podcast, and the author of the Substack, How the Hell with Alex Wagner. Alex Wagner is here, and former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, now co-host of Pod Save the World. Contributor Ben Rhodes is back. Ken Dilanian, take us through your reporting.
Nicole, you know, as everyone knows, the U.S. government remade itself after the 9/11 attacks and just completely reoriented priorities. The FBI was reimagined, put tons of resources into the fight against terrorism. We made a lot of mistakes. A lot of things we did were imperfect. But 25 years after 9/11, when you look back on what the U.S. government did, there were many successes. The U.S. government essentially defeated al-Qaeda and prevented another catastrophic terror attack and unraveled plot after plot. And the FBI in particular got very good at getting inside terror plots and stopping them before they metastasize into something that was very dangerous. And what this report says and compiles is what we've been covering as a slow-rolling disaster, but this report puts it all together, is that the Trump administration has been systematically dismantling a lot of the counterterrorism tools that we've relied on. And it's not even clear that they're doing this intentionally. It's a collection of policies that is resulting in making, as Senator Peters, the author of the report, said, making Americans less safe. And it starts with the hemorrhaging of experienced counterterrorism professionals from places like the FBI and DHS and the Justice Department. 38% of the lawyers in the National Security Division are gone. These are the people who presided over the war on terror, who learned how to prosecute these cases and how to handle FISA warrants and do all of the legal intricacies of prosecuting the war on terror while maintaining Americans' rights. And then the other part of this report is it describes the way that the administration is focusing almost entirely in a domestic context on left-wing extremism while completely ignoring and not even mentioning in its latest counterterrorism strategy the very real problem of right-wing extremism. And that actually has been the more acute terror threat in recent years, is homegrown domestic violent extremists. And it really feels like we are leaving ourselves essentially much less prepared for potential threats, and we won't know it until it happens. That's the really scary part about this. We don't really know how bad this is and how unprepared we are as a government for the threats that exist, Nicole.
Ken Delaney, and it was Christopher Wray who testified before Congress in September or October of 2020 that by far the greatest threat to the homeland was domestic violent extremism, and within that bucket, the largest group was racially motivated white supremacists. So did they go away, or are we just not tracking them anymore?
They're not even mentioned. The white supremacists are not even mentioned in the latest Trump administration counterterrorism strategy. And that just shows that this is more about ideology than anything else. And again, look, we all know it's not in Donald Trump's interest as the president for a catastrophic, horrific terrorist attack to happen on his watch. But the sum total of the policies that his administration is implementing is making that more of a risk. Professionals across the spectrum will say that. And in part, it's a blinkered ideology, the idea that government is always bad. And, you know, it started with DOJ and coming in and just taking a meat axe to these agencies without regard for the kind of people that they were driving out. And then, of course, the ideologically motivated firings. A lot of the FBI agents who worked the cases against Donald Trump happen to be some of the most experienced counterterrorism and counterintelligence agents, and they're gone now. And you can't replace that kind of expertise. So it's a really bleak picture, Nicole.
Alex, you've done some incredible reporting yourself on through the militia movements. Let me show you what a little bit more of what William Braniff said about our vulnerabilities on the extremism front.
All of us have vulnerabilities, and if those vulnerabilities go unaddressed, we could wind up being manipulated into engaging in violent extremism. We did 1,172 interventions. Think about that. 1,172 interventions for individuals who were exhibiting risks of violence. They were making veiled threats of violence. They were socially isolated. And those interventions were across the ideological spectrum. Some people were flirting with white supremacy. Some people were flirting with anti-government extremism. Some people were just flirting with violence for violence sake. The point is, we didn't wait until something terrible happened and then blame the ideology behind it. We actually did a therapeutic intervention. And in 94% of those interventions, the individual got help. And there was no violence. In 6%, they had made a threat to public safety that was imminent, or they had crossed a criminal threshold, and they were referred to law enforcement. So we supported those individuals, averted nearly 1,200 potential acts of violence, and never sacrificed public safety.
I think they describe that as staying left of boom. I mean, this suggests that we're all far, far away from any sort of environment where that's even the government's aim.
Yeah, I mean, in the report from Mike Rogers today is not bedtime reading, because it will leave you freaked out, to say the least. In addition to the hemorrhaging of qualified and, I think, key roles inside the institutions themselves, they've canceled or otherwise politicized $1 billion of federal money that's meant to shore up public safety and national security at the state level, which is often, I mean, that's almost, in terms of targeting and really zeroing in on homegrown terror and terror threats, state level monitoring is essential in all of that. And instead, as you just discussed a second ago, they're focused on Antifa and cartel organizations. Antifa, as a domestic terror organization, does not exist in law, something the report points out. And their war against the drug cartels, which basically amounts to public executions of fishermen in the Caribbean, according to Trump's own DEA, has had no measurable impact on the cocaine trade. They've just killed 226 people in boats since last September and called it a win. I mean, not only are they destroying the institutions from within, those foolish, idiotic, and misguided efforts that they do engage in are also failures. I mean, it's just like a catastrophic level of failure on every front.